Good evening. I'd like to go ahead and we'll have a work session first and then our business meeting. And our work session, we have New Idea Construction, Bill Short, Stony View Subdivision Phase 1, a preliminary plat with a variance request for rolled curbs. Is someone here to represent?
Yes, I'm Bill Short. I'm the owner of New Idea Construction.
And would you want to speak to your request for the would you like to speak to your request for the variance?
Yes, I'm requesting a variance on the blacktop from the depth of it. I'm not even sure the thickness on it now.
So typically for, let me start here. So this section of Stony Creek is if you guys will remember, it is the 55 lots that we agreed to preliminarily approve in terms of transportation related, using one exit and entrance. So where this development lies is this portion of Stony Creek. So it kind of actually is a connector off Middle Creek Way and Wildwood Way. There are 55 lots in this development. As part of a preliminary plat, we generally require, our regulations require, that we lay out the entire proposed development. So we know in this development, you have a key sheet in front of you. We are not looking to approve this key sheet. We are only looking at phase 1. But for the sake of meeting our requirements, I did have them show the potential build out for this development. So that is the area that would connect to the north. So all of this area is potential build out, which is, Bill, how many homes are we talking about potentially?
This one, the first phase is 55. It's 213 in total.
Total build out,
Yes.
213. Okay. So, but again, if you'll recall back to previous commission meetings, we had requested that anything beyond this first 55 lots, that a traffic study be conducted. And so Mr. Short's actively working on that. We've in fact met with our engineer, his engineer, and then there's some other things, sewer and water have to be looked at, like some other things that have to be looked at. So tonight we are looking at just phase 1, and we are looking at preliminary plat only. So that part of the plat allows them to put in roads, construct their infrastructure. At this time, we would not be selling house lots. That would be at final plat time. So this is for infrastructure only, 55 lots that would connect to Middle Creek Way and Wildwood Way. So what we have done in the past is, if you'll recall, this section of Stony Creek requested the variance to do our standard neighborhood streets are 3 inches of base and 1.5 inches of top coat. So rather than building these at any higher standard, which is what was initially on the old plans of Stony Creek, they have the commission in the past has granted that, so they would be asking for the same variance. So 1.5 inches of base, 3 inches of base, 1.5 inches of surface for these streets, and to do roll curbs.
Yes.
Right. So this, I will tell the commission that this subdivision is not roll curbs; it is box curbs throughout the entire subdivision, and the difference is going to be basically access into each unit. So with roll curbs, you don't cut out the curb for your apron and driveway. People, kind of hop that roll curb and drive up on it. So, I don't know if you want to speak to benefits or not, but that's what we're looking at in
Yeah.
terms of the variance.
The benefit of the roll curb is it's better for the city. When you're plowing the streets, you don't have that hitting the edge of where they cut it out and breaking those corners out and replacing it. The city likes that because there's no maintenance there. It kind of rolls. If they do get too far over to the edge, it kind of just rolls up over top of it. We do this in the city of Richmond and Madison County. They went to it because it's better for them. It's better for the builder. It's really no different from me as being the developer, but I do build. So you can put an expansion joint behind the curb, and it lets you control it a lot better than cutting the curb out and doing that and tying it in that way. Yeah. So if it ever has to come back and replaced, you've got a control joint on the bottom. You just pull that out and you can pour it right back in.
The preliminary plat has been through the development review team and has met all those technical requirements.
Okay. Commissioners, any comment?
Yeah, I think as you were describing it, now it's coming back about the variance we previously approved. When it's all done, will there be another final paving done over the 1.5 inches, or is that 1.5 inches final? That's it?
1.5 inches is final, so for us, we don't require the final coat of asphalt up front or when construction's done. So we generally bond that top coat of paving. And so it's put on a bond and it's done when the subdivision is 75% built out. So are you requesting to do any differently than that?
No, I'm not requesting to do anything different than that. I always, in some areas, they make you go ahead and put the blacktop down. If it's in the summertime, it's really not a big deal. In the wintertime, if you're doing a subdivision and you leave the blacktop off, it don't let the water get to the curb, into the drain boxes. So I think a lot of times going into the wintertime, if you've got a subdivision, it needs to be paved. Being honest with you as a developer, I see that because it freezes in front of the drain boxes and stuff like that. So I see some problems in that. But as far as a lot of times you want to wait until the end, so if there's any bad spots and the blacktop comes up, you can repair those before you put the finished coat on. So
Yeah, I'm also thinking about, if you don't, excuse me, if you don't put any paving over it, you end up getting mud into that base, right?
you have to clean it up real well before
Yeah.
you pave it. If you don't, the blacktop will not stick to it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're exactly right.
But we already approved the variance for the previous,
But that's just for thickness only.
yeah.
So that would be for the thickness, for them to be able to construct the streets in terms of pavement depth in the same manner that we've allowed other developments, prior developments that will actually drive. It's the same street. It's going to be the same street.
Right.
So it'll just be constructed the same.
And this one here is actually, when you go back on this here, this is gonna be called Stony View. It's actually, the road is gonna tie eventually, hopefully, all the way back into the other side. But it's not actually part of Stony Creek. We're gonna change the name of it because just different restrictions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not the same. We plan on having an HOA in this part. That way, if, we can maintain certain things with it.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of stony this and harvest that. And
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, any other concerns, issues?
So just to be clear, are we considering a variance for asphalt as well as road curbs, or just road curbs?
We should, and I did not include that on the agenda, and I apologize. So it should be for asphalt thickness and roll curbs. And so, we want to vote on those separately when it comes time, or all is one, however you guys want to do it.
So just to be clear,
3 inches,
okay,
3 inches of base,
okay.
1.5 inches of top coat.
Okay. Any other questions?
I tell you, I really like roll curbs. You know, that for years, you know, we don't have them. But, you know, sometimes you have to have a box curb because of stormwater. You know, it depends on where it's at. I think out there where he's at, I think that's gonna work good. But, he's right. They're really better for street department, better for everything, and you get over stuff. But for a lot of places, you know, if you've got a lot of stormwater coming, it's better to have a box curb. So, you know, you couldn't have them there all the time. You know, they need to be looked at separate sometimes. But I think that's good. That's a good idea.
All right, are we ready? Any other questions? We'll bring this, we're not voting on it, but just see if there are any other questions, and we can move on. All right. Thank you, Mr. Short.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. I'd like to call to order the business session for the Rear Planning Commission, January 23rd, 2024. Second item on the agenda is the election of officers, and we've asked to postpone that until February, to our next meeting. And I am asking commissioners to think about themselves as to if they would like to become chair, or if there's someone that you would like to nominate to be chair for the next year. So I am requesting that everyone think about this carefully. There are several things that will be coming up, but I'm sure all the persons around this table would be an effective chair. So that's what I'm asking for. Okay.
But are you saying you're not willing to serve again as chair?
I have basically another 2 years in my term, and it just seems like that it would be nice to have someone else to take over these next 2 years. Okay? All right. Thank you. All right. Recognition of visitors. Any visitors here for items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have minutes of December the 12th, 2023. They've been distributed to you.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, December the 12th, 2023.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and second that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 as distributed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, we're going to move to old business, and on that is a zone change request for 102 Bond Street. That's the Boone Square Shopping Center. No action item to remain tabled for a conceptual development plan. Is
Yes,
that
Madam
here yet?
Chairman, at the last hearing, we heard the zone change, we had a public hearing for that zone change request. We had asked them for a conceptual plan. So we left that item on the agenda just as required by Robert's Rules of Order, we needed to bring it up again. And, but no action will be needed. It will remain tabled until they bring us a conceptual
So
plan.
we do not have that yet.
We do not have to vote on anything this
Okay.
evening.
All right, so we're moving on to new business. New Idea Construction, Bill Short, Stony View subdivision, Phase 1. And that's your preliminary plat with the variance request for roll curves, which we just discussed.
Yes, again, we are asking for the change from the box curb to the roll curb. We just think it's a better idea for the subdivision and for the city itself and for the builders.
Commissioners,
Or you want to split that with the asphalt thickness?
oh, however you want to do it.
The whole same thing. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the variance request for the asphalt thickness, 3-inch base, 1.5-inch top coat, and the roll curb for the New Idea Construction Stony View subdivision, Phase 1.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Martin. It has been moved and second that we approve a variance for the asphalt thickness of 3 inches and 1.5 on Stony View subdivision, and also request the variance for roll curves in that same division. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank you. All right, the next is, we have a zone, public hearing, a zone change request at 688 Scaffold Cane Road. Mike King is requesting to change the zone from B1, which is minor business, to B2, major business district. And you're representing,
Good evening. My name is Corey Isaacs. Isaacs Law Office, 306 West Main Street, Richmond, Kentucky. And I am representing today the owner, Mr. King, in his requested zone change.
okay, would you, Tony, do we need a, swear? Thank you.
I'd be happy to give testimony if I'm allowed, and I do. However, I'll limit my spill to the extent I find necessary. And then Mr. King will come up behind me, and he'll be able to answer some questions and take the testimony that'll be necessary to make the record. However, if I may, Ms. Haney, can you bring the property up? You're always a step ahead of us. Lovely. So the property at issue now, this is a piece of property that's currently zoned B1. We've asked for a change to B2. Now, very particular is they're the exact same requirements for setback, size, for the parking. The building itself is very much appropriate for either use, right? They match across the board. Now, what is extremely particular about this is this property has been used for, it was the country store in my memory. However, I think my client's going to testify that it's been used for the same purpose for over 50 years. Now, what has changed is there was recently a vote in May of 2024, May 2023, that then created an issue for the city. The city became wet because it was a part of a countywide vote. Now, the problem, and then what brings this request for a zone change, is very simple. You cannot sell from a convenience store pursuant to the applicable code any alcoholic beverage. However, B2 will allow for a restaurant to sell it. It does allow for a convenience store to sell everything but that. Now, if this is a gas station on the main strip, we're not having this conversation. The economic changes, the changes in this area, the large amount of traffic that goes down this road. This is a 2-lane road in which the comprehensive plan describes as a spoken wheel that feeds the city. The words are important. If you're describing it as feeding the city, then I think it's very difficult to say why this cannot be a B2, which does require higher traffic volumes, right? Now, there's some of the issues that I expect and some of the questions that I expect today, I think are very much directed at where is this property located along this road if the comprehensive plan describes it as a spoken wheel that feeds the city. I will stand on the argument of, therefore, it must be a high traffic volume area that's very obviously been a commercial use for 50 plus years. So the change in the circumstances are, one, there is that economic change. Places are now allowed to sell things that my client's not. That is an economic change. The fact that our comprehensive plan has now described Scaffold Cane Road as a part of that spoke, there's your change in the area. So really, it always, in my opinion, comes down to what is it that you want? You know, what do you find is appropriate? I can check all the boxes to justify the change on paper. However, we're certainly open to conversation as to what issues do you anticipate? What are your concerns? And are there ways that we can address those concerns moving forward? Now, I would love to answer any questions that you all may have. However, I'm also happy to bring Mr. King up here and put him on the spot and make him try to answer those too.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
I think you answered my question, which was going to be, what can you do in B2 that you can't do in B1? And you answered that. Yeah, you answered that. I guess my other question, is there plans, because I see in the application it's going to remain a convenience store with the idea of expanding the items that the store is able to sell. Is there plans to put in fuel pumps?
None that I've been told, and Mr. King, he is the owner of record for the property, and he would be better equipped to answer that. However, that's not been anything that's been discussed at this point. The front of the store, I think it would probably get in the way. Where are you going to put the fuel pumps? I think it would get in the way. There's adequate parking pursuant to the comprehensive plan and planning in general for the square footage. There's more than adequate parking. But the idea that you've got to put a car on both sides of a pump and the pump's got to be in the middle of something, I think it would probably get in the way. I don't think it'd be a good idea. However, thankfully it's not my property. But going to your question of what can you do and what can you not do, interesting enough, a private club can go there, right? A convenience store, eating and drinking establishments, as described by the code, all of those are appropriate as set in either B1 or B2. The hitch in what brings me before you all is the law changed, and they did a really good job amending the code. They saw it coming. My dear friend Peanut, when he was still with us at the country club, we had the golf course changed, and that was a small step towards our current reality. However, our reality is that the entire county is wet. The people of the county have voiced an opinion as to what their wish is, and what I'm trying to do now is get a convenience store the same treatment as the gas station, and that convenience store is appropriate because those convenience stores are necessary to serve those areas of the county. Now, this is only, I think, 0.7, I have it at 0.73 miles from where we're at now. It's not that far away. However, it feels a little farther as you make your way down there. But I could have a private club. I could have an eating and drinking establishment. But if you sell chips and pop and an ice cream, as Mr. Gilbert enjoys his ice cream, then we're not allowed. I don't believe that. I think there's an element of fairness, justice, and logic in what this commission is tasked to do. And here we've got a fellow that's owned property. He's owned it for 10 years. Previous to that, the prior deed was transferred in 1996. Before that, the record did not appear electronically, meaning it would be prior to 1988. So it's been in the same usage for that long. And if the alcohol change would have occurred back then, I doubt I'm having this conversation with you. We simply ask that you allow us to obtain the B2 meets every utility issue, every size setback requirement, and the fact that comprehensive plan does state very specifically that Scaffold Cane Road is one of the spokes that feed the city, that means it's a higher traffic area, which allows for this type of use.
I know there's been discussion about upgrading, use that term, upgrading Scaffold Cane, coming into Berea there, just coming up the hill, that kind of thing. Does anybody know where that is?
The only project I'm familiar with is a shared use path that has, it actually has grant funding through the state. So I anticipate that happening, within the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's realistic. There's a couple other ones that are kind of ahead of it for shared use path or trails. But that connector would actually, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. It would go from to very close to this. So it would go down to Logston Lane from the beginning of Scaffold Cane Road up by, campus.
Right.
But in terms of improving this road, of course, it's a state road, so I don't always know what's going on, but I don't recall that being on the 6-year transportation plan.
Yeah, that's probably a poor choice of word, but yes, there is the shared use paths. I couldn't remember what it was.
And Mr. Lakes, what is the shared use path? I'm somewhat unfamiliar.
It's kind of a multi-use
Trail.
Walkway as
Trail
well as a bike path. Yeah.
Is it bringing more people into that area? Is that the goal of it?
Well, the attempt is to get more walkability to different areas of town. So, now we've put in, I think the city's put in about 15 miles that are connected of trails and shared use paths. And so again, just providing walkability and access to areas of town where, again, we think college students probably live on Elm Street and Cherry Road and some of those apartments and probably need to walk up that hill to get, and right now no real place for them to walk on Scaffold Cane Road.
That's fair.
This current store, isn't it also a vape shop, convenience/vape?
Now the tobacco license, I'm unaware. Now vape is commonly referred to in many different factors these days, which I'm far beyond at this point in my life, thankfully. And I'll have to ask my client. He may be able to give you more. I don't want to tell you something's wrong.
Okay.
But if I'm happy to answer any more questions, but if now would be an appropriate time, Madam Chairperson, I'll call my client if you
Okay.
don't mind. Please, Mr. King.
Mr. King?
Mike King.
Yeah, presently, I think it is. I do.
Mr. King, the question was whether or not this serves as a vape shop.
It does at this time, yes.
What does that mean? You don't have a better idea of what a vape shop is. Is it nicotine
Yes,
and they sell tobacco?
that's correct.
Yeah, correct. So it does have the license to serve and sell tobacco, which I would say most convenience stores do. And if I may, real quick, just for record purposes, Mr. King, you've been present this entire time today.
Yes,
You've heard the statements that I've made. You wish to adopt those as your own. It's true and accurate.
that's correct.
All right. Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, Mark.
Not that this is relevant, but just looking through the submitted documents, I couldn't find how big the property is.
So the store contains 2,382 feet. The property is currently zoned B1, so I would say it would be an acre at minimum based on the current zone, which would also satisfy B2. Yes, they are at for any setbacks and size wise.
Do you know how big the,
I do not have a survey of it.
What we will do, just for the purpose of this meeting, is just pull a measurement off of my aerial mapping. It is not survey grade by any means, but it gives us a good idea about what size at least the lot is. So you said the building itself is 2,300?
23, 28.
So the reason I ask is that, you know, when we consider these kind of things, we have to think to the future, right? In changing the zoning, that, you know, there's no reason that the current building could not be demolished and something totally new put in there, right? And the implications of that with the zoning change. That's why I ask how big the actual piece of property is. And given that, you know, looking at the comprehensive plan, right, all that area out there is pretty much zone residential, except for this one lot that's basically grandfathered in as business. You know, that's just the way things are, so.
And that's what I think the comprehensive plan calls for, those convenience style shops to serve that type of area. You don't always have to go to Kroger. I'd rather you not. You know, there's mom and pop places which desperately and appreciate, more importantly. But if that's a concern, we have no intention of this property transferring hands. If that's a concern, you know, put it within the ordinance. We'll go back to B1 if we change it. We're happy to do that. We're very upfront and forward in this approach. This is what we want to do, and we've been doing it for a long time.
No, it's okay. The property will change owners at some point.
Eventually. But he won't be here to fuss at me.
He won't be,
I'm
but
not as concerned.
yeah, part of our decision-making is
course.
thinking about those kind of things and unintended consequences and so forth.
So the property is about 3/4 of an acre, so 32,000. Again, we're not really measuring this accurately, but gives you a general idea. So I'd say 3/4 of an acre would be a good guess. And I will put a zoning layer up on the map just to give some perspective to that last comment. Again, it is R2, which is single-family single-family duplex that is adjacent zoning.
There is a copy of a general warranty deed in here, and it does say .79.
Oh, that's pretty close.
Sorry, I missed it, Greg.
I don't have it surveyed, but when you pull the plat for that, the plat, it's multiple different tracks that I've done the math, and it doesn't add up to that number either. It's actually greater, and I'm just not willing to tell you unless I have a survey. I don't wish to speak biblically about something I'm not capable or competent of doing.
It's not completely relevant to the zone change.
But it's good to know.
So when you say you're gonna sell alcohol, will it be packaged? And what type of license are you looking to get? Will it be?
Simply package.
Okay,
It's not gonna be a bar.
okay.
It's not gonna be a consumption on premise element. No, I don't think the bar, you know, in all fairness, the neighborhood bar area, it's not that far out, right? It doesn't fit right, it doesn't feel right. This is different, this is just basically a convenience store.
You just go to town.
Yeah, this is, in my neck of the woods, this is Unity Grocery that can sell beer. It's really convenient for those who wish to partake. They sell everything else.
How far over is the center line from the road over on this parking lot? Do you remember what it is? Or you got it? On the state
No,
road?
but I can, give me just a minute, and I can give you a good guess. I'm gonna change the map view where we're looking more straight down on it,
Yeah,
because that'll give us a
yeah, what
little
it is.
better.
Yeah, what it usually is, you know,
So you're saying
the center line of the
from,
parking lot on the state road. Is it 75 feet?
so that's gonna be really hard for me to answer that, and
Okay,
I'll
what
tell
I-
you why. We've got utility lines, overhead utility lines. I'm
Yeah.
gonna zoom in one more time here. So we've got overhead utility lines. My guess is that where this white line is beyond
would
the pavement, that there probably is a right-of-way distance that is state-owned property that comes back into his property. So probably he only, you know what I mean? He doesn't own, my guess anyway, is that he probably doesn't own this, that his lot line starts somewhere beyond this. So if we take a measurement of, and again, that's a complete assumption, Just given my knowledge of general right-of-ways, state right-of-ways usually are wider than the pavement width. So if I go from where they've marked their line, 26 feet. But we're talking about a pavement width of probably about the same, 25, 26 feet.
What I was thinking of is a shared, which the state would still have room that for a shared use path, I think, without getting on his property, so, you know, we could.
It's on the other side of the road, but it
Okay, it's gonna
doesn't,
be on the other side, it's.
but it doesn't come down this far either, so.
It stops
the-
at Logston.
The plans for it stop at Logston Lane.
But I don't think that changed the parking any as far as the traffic going in and out of the store, that much, you know, so I think the parking lot is still, it'll be much the same.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you, guys.
Okay, commissioners, are you, yes, Martin?
I'd like to make a motion. So finding that there has been major changes of economic and social nature, specifically with Berea becoming wet, that within the area involved, that was not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and has substantially altered the basic character of this area, that we approve the zone change from B1 to B2 for, where's the address on this thing?
688.
688 Scaffold Cane Road.
Okay. Do I have a second? Thank you. All right, it has been moved and second that we approve the zone change request for 688 Scaffold Cane Road from B1 to B2 based up on major changes of an economic, physical, social nature. And it was within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan, and which substantially alters the basic character of such an area. Do we also want to include that it is within the comprehensive plan?
Oh, that is according to.
According to?
Yes, please
Okay.
add that.
Thank you, okay. So according to the comprehensive plan. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. All right, congratulations, okay. Tonight, we have a couple of discussion items that's part of our agenda. Stephanie has, at the last meeting, we talked about looking at housing trends for Berea. And so we have that, as well as Amanda and Martin, you're going to talk about some future housing needs. So I will turn it over to Stephanie first.
So I'll keep it short. I just, I thought that this would be good to have as we make these types of decisions when people come before us and want to do development plans and things. It's good to know what the needs are and, you know, and if there's shortages or if we, you know, where we stand with rentals versus home ownership and that type of thing. So I'm not going to read a bunch of statistics. I've handed out all the pamphlets, and this is kind of short notice because I had a speaker scheduled and she had to cancel today. So anyway, what you can gather from this, though, based on all the facts and figures, and I have poured over a lot of numbers, Berea is doing very well. We've done very well with keeping up with everybody else. One of the statistics was that they're 18 out of 100, which is very impressive considering our size. That's for the bestplaces.net. They ranked 18. So, and this is based on crime rate, cost of living, educational level, employment opportunities, and that type of thing. So, and you compare us to other towns. In comparison to Richmond, of course, they have much larger numbers than we do. They are actually the third largest, fastest growing city in Kentucky, which is crazy, but you can't really compare us with them, although there has been some discussion in the past of our home prices as compared to their home prices. And one of the handouts I gave you, you can see that Richmond is significantly higher in their median home price than Berea is. So we're doing pretty well at keeping the cost of living, as affordable as we can. So that's a good thing. One of the main concerns that I did notice is, if you'll notice where it says that Berea College actually ranked number one for most affordable colleges. If you turn the page there, it says renters make up 41% of Berea's population, and 2.4 of houses and apartments are available for rent in Berea. 2.4%. That's not a good number. So that's one need that we have going into the future and looking at our plans for the future is we do need more rentals. There's a shortage of rentals in Berea. So, when we have someone that wants to do a development, we need to take that into consideration that is a need that we have. If we only have 2.4% available, that's a problem. And, is that contributing to our homeless numbers seemingly to go up? I don't know. That's a good question, but it could factor in. And so that's what we don't want, obviously. So then you look at more affordable housing choices, for those renters, and what does that look like in the future? That would be maybe looking at some restrictions of the subdivisions, maybe getting the developers to work with us and us work with them to get the square footage lower so that the cost of the home wouldn't be as much if the square footage was lower. They could afford to build them a little cheaper. That's something maybe we should look at going into the future. And there's lots of ideas. We need to look at, government housing type of complexes that we don't have very many of those in this area. Nobody really wants that in their backyard, but at the same time, we have to make our decisions based on if it lines up with the comprehensive plan and if, the social changes that, we have these things that we have to go by. We can't necessarily go by if you like to jog in that area. We have to go by if it lines up with the comprehensive plan, if there's been social and economic changes. And so, just for the public to understand what guidelines we have to go by, are very strict. Although we love to hear their concerns and we try our best to work with them, we also have to keep in mind the needs that are in our town and how we can keep the economy moving. Building is down a little bit, but it's down across the nation, so it's not just here. And so there again, we have to work with the developers that are willing and have the resources to build more homes because there is a shortage right now, not just in Berea, but across the nation. But so far we've done pretty good with it. We're not in any more of a deficit than anybody else. But that's just things to keep in mind, and I thought would be good knowledge for all of us to have as we make the decisions that we make. So, and you all can look over those numbers, and I try to do comparisons with smaller towns and such. But anyway, I thought that would be helpful information for us to have. And if you would like a quarterly update on how housing trends, how they're going, or how our local market is moving along, I'd be glad to do that. As a realtor, I keep up with these things, so I'd be glad to do that if y'all want to do a quarterly report or something. But as just a snapshot of last year and where we are, we're doing well. We're doing very well.
So I'll just piggyback off that, and just wanted to mention that Martin and I attended. So he was a previous member of he served on the Bluegrass Ads Regional Planning Council. Stephanie has now taken that position, and so she'll in the future be attending those. But they had a joint meeting with I don't want to say this wrong, so let me get my notes. Bluegrass Economic Development Advisory Committee back in December, and so I'd asked Martin to attend that with me, and a few things.
And the mayor went also.
Yeah, mayor and our city administrator, county judge executive, and their planning director was there. It was actually very well attended. And so I'm going to ask Martin, just as I go through some of these highlights, just jump in necessary. But the biggest thing I wanted to convey to you guys as a commission is housing is a very big topic right now. There are, we know when things get to Bluegrass Ad and they're starting to put things out to local communities, you better start paying attention because it's needed, right? We know with those things that now we know that it's not just a Berea problem. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's irrelevant. I think it helps us to understand that it's a regional and a national problem, not just a Berea problem. So because of that, now this whole housing and affordability is gaining some momentum and getting a lot of attention. And affordability, that's going to be your big hot topic right now. How do we, and I just very briefly perused the stuff that Stephanie gave, but in that I saw, what did it say? The median house price in Berea is now $289, or was it higher than $289?
$260.
But we look at, what are the jobs here? What are people's incomes here? What kind of housing can they afford? And this trickles down to these developers and builders that are sitting in our audience, to the people who are out there, boots on the ground, providing this housing. And so I think we as a body need to look at what can we do. And so we'll go through that in just a minute. As a snapshot of just that meeting, what came out of that was, again, topics on affordability, topics on rent burden. Martin and I came up with, there's somewhere between 30 to 40% of people's income, if you're a renter, goes toward your rent. Median price of house. Now, this was from that meeting. This was the statistics from the Bluegrass Realtors Association. Did I say that right? They said that the median price of houses in this region had increased 47% since 2019. That's only 5 years. Quality of life being more important now than ever, and just generational change, or I actually equated that to generational changes. So, whereas in the past there was pride in home ownership, now I think that movement in newer generations is they're spending their money differently. They're not as interested in mowing the grass and planting a garden, and I'm not saying that's for everybody, but we look at the needs, how these needs are changing generationally. Do we need more rentals, more condos, things where, someone else is taking care of that green space or that outside? Again, just things that we need to be thinking about as we're moving forward. And again, just that topic of your available jobs in your community, your economic development and those bringing those jobs in matters on what kind of houses we're building. So one of the biggest initiatives of that is what can the city do, right? They talked about updating regulations to allow for accessory dwelling units. So that's your mother-in-law's quarters. I had someone in the office just last week that owns a piece of property in a R2 zone, wanted to build 2 houses, have 2 detached single-family dwellings on that property. And I don't think there's a way that our regulations allow that. A duplex, 2 units combined, sure, you can do that all day. But can you have 2 houses on that? I don't think our regulations allow that. So looking at different ways that we can meet this housing need, I think is going to be really important. Looking at our regulations. So again, things they talked about, expedite your review and approval time. We really tried to cut this time. We're having Zoom meetings. We got rid of all the deadlines. We've done as much as I know that we can possibly do to expedite review times. But again, that's something that we still have communities and cities saying, well, if you don't submit by the first Tuesday of the month, you have to wait a whole another month to get on the agenda. We really try hard not to push people in that corner. I'm not gonna say 100% works, but we try. Incentivizing and encouraging infill. Stephanie mentioned this, Martin and I just in our conversation together, we're talking about, we have Habitat for Humanity of Madison County, but I know coming from Eastern Kentucky that there are lots of nonprofits such as Christian Appalachian Project, other co-ops that do home building, that offer more affordable solutions for people that our community just really doesn't have a lot of. I think since I've been here, I didn't count them up, but just in my head, I'm thinking Habitat may have built 5 houses since I've worked here, in 15 years. So it may be more, but again, that's the ones I can just think of. And, but again, we need that presence, right? We need that as an option for people. And then identifying those needs. We've talked about more than a few times, the 55 plus and the senior living. And one thing that that Denise sent me was this new concept of small house nursing homes. So instead of building a big facility, you build these smaller dwelling units where people can more feel like they are still in their home. So again, just trying to look at our regulations to see where we can do some things to, like Stephanie said, help drive down the cost, right? So smaller lot sizes, that's one of the big topics right now. And again, accessory dwelling units, what can we do to help, right? And then the next thing I wanted to mention is that it may not be a choice. So there is legislation proposed. It is House Bill 102, where they are looking at changing KRS Chapter 100, which, as we know, is basically our little law on planning and zoning. And so there is legislation related to local planning and zoning where they would require local governments to prioritize housing within applicable zones, ease minimum square footage requirements, so smaller lot sizes, more density, again, not making people build on a quarter acre. And so I think you look at where's that mix, because we have zoning that's PUD, that's, Stony Creek, where it's intentionally more condensed. We know that zone was set up for this more compact, more dense area. But now we need to look at these R1 zones where we're requiring them to build on quarter acre lots and 100 feet of street frontage. And so, so that's something that, again, we may not have a choice. I think we look at it now, see what we can do, but again, it's being brought forward. And other things that they talked about are that cities need to, that the legislation says is that we need to facilitate location of multifamily housing. So that's your renters, that's your apartments, condos, accessory dwelling units, tiny homes, and manufactured housing. And so it's very possible that there's going to be new legislation on mobile homes that, traditionally we very much restricted those. Even with the compatibility standards saying you can't just bring one in and put it on a permanent foundation and call it a house in Berea city limits. So, just wanted to speak to that these things are very hot topics. They are coming in one form or another, whether we're made to do it or asked to do it or whatever. So that leads me into what are our next moves? I think that we, in the very near future, will be looking at, so I'm going to bring proposals forward for updates to our land management development ordinance. In that, I will bring proposals for changing the lot size, changing some language to allow these mother-in-law's quarters. Again, back to the R2 zoning, making it where maybe you can just build 2 houses there instead of one detached or one attached structure. And then what I would like to do is thinking about, so the Bluegrass ad has said that they will be putting out opportunities for funding sources for housing needs assessments. And so, of course, if we have an opportunity to get a grant to fund that project, we want to jump on that, right? We've talked about, as a group, we would love to have a housing study. And so if there are opportunities where the Bluegrass ad is helping through a grant or whatever means, help fund those projects, I think that we need to look for that opportunity. So I anticipate trying to get updates to our land management development ordinance done in the next few months. And then maybe starting July 1, we work on this housing needs assessment. For me, the priority is, what do we actually want to come out of that housing study? So I've been talking to architects and design firms that do that type of work. And the biggest thing is, like, we can go to Bluegrass Ad, we can go to our comprehensive plan, you can go to the census website, you can find lots and lots of information about, you know, this stuff that she pulled. You know, we can find lots of information about, you know, how much housing we have, what the expected, just a generic expected rate of growth is, and how much we're gonna need. I think as a group, what we need to think about is there something more that we want from this housing study? Or do we want just the basic information that we could pull online, you know, that we could gather ourselves? And what are we trying to do with this information? I think that's a very important thing, is, again, there's a lot of information available. I think we got to figure out why we want it and what we want that information to do for us. My opinion is, we know we have a 2025 comprehensive plan update coming. So what I'd like to see is that's going to be here before you know it. You know, that's one more year we've got till we have to stop and throughout 2025 have to adopt that new comprehensive plan. So my thinking is, let's do updates to our regulations in this kind of first half of this year. We jump into a housing needs assessment for the last half of this year, and then wisely use that information that we've gathered from this housing study, that we've paid these professionals to do for us, wisely incorporate that information into our next comprehensive plan and make it where we just roll from one to the other. So, you know, at this point, I'm thinking we use the same consultant for both a housing study and a comprehensive plan. That makes sense to me, because, again, they know what we're after. They're getting that information. Now they're applying that information. So, happy to answer any questions. Just wanted to give you a short timeline, longer timeline overview of what's being discussed right now for housing. Thank you all.
Comments, questions? Well, I want to say thanks.
I'll add a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, everything that Stephanie and Amanda said, that meeting was, I mean, I've been involved in housing construction ever since I got a degree in architecture from UK. But I think that meeting we went to was very helpful. you know, and certainly identifying those communities that have a housing burden of over 30%, right? You know, that's where we got problems, because if you're under 30%, you know, and your housing is affordable, you know, affordable housing is a foundational step to building family and community wealth, right? And that's what we want. So having that kind of idea of what situation we got in Berea, I think is really important. And I guess the realization, I mean, I guess we kind of knew it, but there's a ripple effect happening, and it's been going on for a number of years. A lot of folks from California and Colorado, those places are moving into Kentucky for a number of reasons, water not being the least of those, right? And so they've moved to Lexington, but Lexington has a lot more hoops to jump through in terms of construction of a lot of scale housing. So then the ripple has happened to all the communities outside of Lexington. I mean, I think we see it in Richmond, we see it in Berea, Cynthiana, Paris, right? Nicholasville, obviously. So some of that is the explanation of why we're seeing that happening in Berea. But it also means that this is a regional issue. And I was encouraged by the idea that of coming together as a region and addressing some of these issues, right? And again, as you all know, it's 30 minutes from Berea to Man of War, right? And that's anymore, that's no big deal for someone to commute, so we're gonna see all that. House Bill 102, so I've been doing a lot of work with the legislature for the past 15 years, right? And still doing it even though I'm retired. But yeah, I saw 102, and I know the bill sponsor, and he comes from Northern Kentucky, and I've read it, and it is kind of groundbreaking. I think when I look at it, it's 17 pages, right, of which 11 is pretty substantial. You know, I always look at legislation and think about what are the unintended consequences that come from legislation, and especially consequences to small and rural communities, right? I mean, you know, some of the recommendations for making affordable housing is to eliminate parking requirements. Well, that kind of makes sense, maybe, in Lexington, right? We couldn't do it in Berea because we're so automobile dependent here. So those are the kind of things I look at, right? And I think you're right, Amanda. Well, one, if House Bill 102 passes, we're gonna have to rewrite a lot of our codes, right? We are just going to have to do that. And there's some major changes in there, some of which Representative Doan, just knowing him and knowing he comes from Northern Kentucky, I know he doesn't have a Berea mindset, right? But some of it is going to essentially, we're not going to be able to zone R1, R2, R3. It's just R, right? And within that, you can have single family, you can have duplexes, triplexes, you can have 2 buildings detached, you can have, you know, mother-in-law units. Hell, according to where this is, you can pull in a trailer or a mobile home into that backyard of what is currently single-family residence, and that's permissible. And we as a community, not only have nothing to say about that, right? So I have some concerns about some of the things that are written in here, and those unintended consequences for small communities. I think there's a lot of good in here.
Is he also talking about row houses? Because he's in Northern Kentucky.
He doesn't mention row houses, right? But it throws out a lot of what we typically have described as what R1, R2, R3 can do. Essentially, there is no R1, R2, there's just R. And you can do anything essentially within R. You know, one of the things is our representative for Berea, Representative Josh Braze. Well, anyway, this bill has now been assigned to House Committee on Local Government, of which Josh Bray, our representative, is the vice chair of that. So we actually, we have an ear, or we could have the opportunity to come to them and have our voices heard, right? Anything we want to change, any concerns we might have. And I would encourage all the commissioners to read over House Bill 102. And, let's think about it. I mean, as a community, let me say, here's some options, right? As individual commissioners, we can look it over. We can certainly, as individual commissioners, send a message to Representative Braze and say, this is what I feel, right? We as a commission, next step was we as a commission come up with our concerns or recommendations to it. We could also ask that the city council either oppose, supports, or, also make recommendations. There's a lot of options here. This is the beauty of the legislative process in Kentucky, is you have ability to change that. Anyway, I'm done blabbering, I think.
Do you think for the purpose of the legislation that it would be wise to have a work session just on the bill itself and maybe propose? Because again, like you said, there are things that we can't say reduce your parking requirement, right? We have people parking on streets where buses can't get through and the trash company can't get through because people have so many vehicles and they park on the streets if that parking's not provided for them. So would it be wise, would this group want to schedule a work session just to work through some of those things? Because like Martin said, I think this is a good opportunity for us as a community to, I think there are things that we need to address now, but this could be very impactful on our regulations moving forward. Are there things that we want to should we dissect it a little more, take a closer look at it, and see where we stand as a group, as a commission? And then, because we do have a connection there, to maybe voice an opinion on it.
I would make that recommendation that we take a work session, and again, I think we could just go through, if everybody reads the bill ahead of time, and we could just go through it, line by line and talk about the implications, right? There's a number of things in here. I'll just pick one out, right? A political subdivision, that's, local government shall not prohibit or restrict a property owner from subdividing an existing single-family zone lot in any manner, right? Right. That's just one of them, right? There's a lot of good stuff. I'm not saying
Sure.
bad. There's a lot of good stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that I see in here from a small community aspect, like, what's that going to look like in Berea, right? And it really throws, I think a planning commission, board of adjustment, all these vehicles that we have, are about making Berea a better place, for a safer, healthier place to live in. And some of those limit our ability to do any of that, right?
I think it's a good idea.
That's a good idea,
I think
yes.
Mr. Short has a
I've
comment.
got a question here, if you don't care. It's got two things, and what you all are just talking about. I'm just wondering about that. As a developer, we have certain things that we can do, and we can restrict the subdivision to. They're not going to throw that away, are they?
Short
that's-
answer is maybe.
That's
right?
how we get people in these houses. We get people in these subdivisions, is the restrictions we put out there.
Yeah, so some of the language in here, I hate to speak in broad terms, right? So a lot of the language in here takes away the authority of, how's it called it, a local political subdivision. That means local government, right, or planning and zoning. It takes that away. It does not take away the ability for the homeowners association to do all that, right?
I know the developer usually puts the restrictions out there, and then the homeowners association is the one that just actually makes them abide by the rules. So the developer puts those restrictions out there, and then the HOA is what makes them, you know,
Enforces them.
Yeah.
go.
But if 102 does pass, there's going to be implications all the way down the line, you know, to even
Yeah, well,
yourself.
he shouldn't pass. I'll be the first one to stand up and say that, and I'll be the first one to call. Come on.
Well,
And I think-
look it over before, you know, you just do that judgment. Again, there's some good stuff in here that allows.
It'll hurt our community, it'll hurt Madison County. I've got 3 developments going on in
Yeah.
Madison County.
I know it potentially could create disparity, right? If one homeowners association says you can't pull in a small mobile home in the back of the lot here, even if it's for your mother-in-law, right?
Right.
But the homeowner association right next door says that's fine, right? It just creates that, I think it has potential to create that tension, right?
Yes, it does.
It
Yes.
sounds like
And-
it would wreak havoc on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think part of what government about, especially local government, is creating a level playing field for everybody, right? And
Well, that's the reason you move into a subdivision is because of restrictions. You move into it because you don't want a boat sitting in front of your house. Nothing against people that like to boat, but a lot of people don't want to look at it
Right.
all the time. You know, I have requirements that it can't sit there. It has to go to a storage facility. You can't have a vehicle that sits there for a period of time. There's certain things that you move into that subdivision because that's what you want. You don't want to live. You know, if you want to live like that, you want to live out in the country where there's no restrictions, then that's fine. But some people want those restrictions. They ask for those restrictions before they even purchase the home.
Right.
The next question I have is, you approve the variances, but I don't think it was stated the subdivision was approved to go forward.
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
When the motion was made, I took it for granted that we were approving the preliminary plat with the 2 variances requested.
yeah,
But when the motion was stated, it was a motion to approve the variances, not to approve a preliminary plat with, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yes. I didn't want to walk out here like that.
yeah, good thing. Are we still in business session? or
We are.
Yes, we are. We can do whatever we need to do. Okay. Thank you for bringing that. Somehow or other, I guess I was thinking it had been approved before, and this was just thought we approved it the last time, but we didn't. Huh?
Yeah, and I
thought we
didn't know
approved
whether I
those
should
55.
correct it or not, but since you caught it too,
Yeah, bump, bump,
I
bump.
was afraid you was going.
I really thought it was a
take that javelin and
technicality,
get it over.
You were old.
I took it as a technicality, but I think it's wise if we just remake the motion and just revote. That way we capture it correctly.
So this would be based on Greg's original motion, right? Or just restate the whole thing?
I'd restate the whole thing.
The whole
'cause
thing?
I think the.
We approved the
We've already
variances, we
approved
just
the
need to
variances.
prove
Oh,
the
okay,
plat.
Preliminary
sure.
plat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
And I guess I
Okay,
thought
so,
we had done it. though.
I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Stony View subdivision phase 1.
Second.
Okay, been moved and second that we have approved the preliminary plat for Stony Creek subdivision phase 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
I'll
thank you.
sleep better tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Truly.
clarification. I do think that, you know, again, this, what we are tasked with is to do, you know, look into the future, do good planning for the future, take into regard everyone in the community and their needs, but also to keep our little Berea culture, right? And so that's a big part of it too. So I think it probably would be wise. I would like to schedule something for us to just, again, let's dissect this a little further. Let's see what we like. Let's think about these long-term implications and at least express our concerns to the legislators, anybody that will take our ear.
And then maybe possibly we could have a forum where if some of the developers or builders wanted to give, or people in the community in general, if they wanted to give their 2 cents worth too. Anybody can have a voice in it, so, it's not just us.
Yep, good point.
Yeah, and from my experience, legislators are actually open to it, right? I mean,
I think so.
they want to hear from folks because they don't want to, pass something that they think is good, but does something that is actually counterproductive.
So do you think we should just have a public hearing about it?
I hate to open it for a public hearing. The public is invited to attend our work sessions. So what I think might be best, again, it's a really informational gathering. Let's have a work session, but let's make sure that we try to get it out to. So like I can blast out an email to developers and builders, send the information out, make sure that they can send back their concerns, make sure that we advertise for it a little more than what we would a normal meeting, so that if there are people who, but the only reason, Denise, that I hesitate to have a public hearing is that we're not making a decision at that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd love
And,
to have we'll have a
recommend-
work session.
Okay, recommendation, I guess, would be sooner rather than later, because there are only so many days in that,
Yeah, it's a long session this year.
yeah, but still short.
Yeah.
30 days, isn't it? No, 60 days.
I can check in with Representative Braze and just see how soon that the local government committee might bring that up.
Do you mind to just let me know what we'll plan?
Or you
for
can do it.
February
Is
13th.
no, if you'll just let me know, what we'll plan for is a February work session. And, but if we need to have a special called sooner than that would be really the only thing I would need to know, if we need to plan something sooner.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I thank Martin and certainly Stephanie and Amanda for bringing this to our attention, realizing that while sometimes we don't get all those notices and know the kinds of things we should be going in and looking at. And so we very much appreciate that. And as we think about the future of Berea, and that's what we're about, the future of Berea. All right. I'll have nothing else. I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And go Cats.